by the World Meteorological Organization and the European Union's Earth Observation Program, Copernicus. The report provides the status of key climate indicators using the WMO and partner organizations' operational monitoring systems and latest data and information on impacts, risks, and policy from the United Nations agencies. I would like to thank all of the agencies, as well as all the individuals that has contributed to the report. In the course of the next 2 hours, we will have statements of partnerships to deliver the 2021 State of Climate in Europe report as a contribution to the UN Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goal 13 on climate action. We will then have a presentation of the report itself, and finally a high-level panel on partnerships to address climate change, extreme events, and disaster risk reduction towards implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So let us turn to the statements on partnership to deliver the 2021 State of Climate in Europe report as a contribution to the UN agenda. We have 4 speakers. It's the WMO Secretary, General Secretary Petri Talas, the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Europe, Ms. Olga Algayirova, and the Director General of ECMWF, Florence Robier. Those 3 are present here on the podium, and we will have a video presentation by Dr. Mauro Facchini, Head of the Unit for Earth Observation at the European Commission. Each of them will have up to 5 minutes, and we start with the WMO Secretary General Petri Talas. Please, Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ruar, and welcome to this event. We have had the practice to publish status of climate reports from global perspective, and we have been doing so also this spring. And the coming Sunday, we will publish tentative status of climate report again globally in Sharm el-Sheikh, and last week we published the greenhouse gas report in New York, and we have started the practice to publish also regional status of climate reports, and we have already published several of them for all of the other regions, for Africa, Asia, Pacific, and also for for Americas, and this is the first time when we publish it for Europe, and we have, although Europe is very important region for us, I'm sorry that it's the first one for you, and you are the last one to be addressed in that respect. But the results that you will soon see, I'm sure that they will be very interesting. And I don't speak more because I will present this part of the report together with my colleague from Copernicus fairly soon. So I will leave some space for the colleagues to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petri. Then give the floor to the UNEC Executive Secretary, Olga Algayirova, please.
Thank you, sir. Dear Secretary General, dear Petri, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here present today at the launch of the State of the Climate in Europe 2021 report. And thanks for invitation to WMO. This report clearly shows that we are off track of SDG 13. So this is why we are here today, and we need to talk about it. And it is both with regards of adaptation and mitigation. But what the report also shows is the strong power of partnerships. Only in cooperation we can jointly and more efficiently assess climate change impacts, vulnerabilities, and take action on climate change adaptation and mitigation. The UN Water Group of experts on water and climate, coordinated by UNEC, WMO, and UNESCO, is an example of such a strong partnership, bringing together more than 30 partners. And this group jointly prepared the chapter on water, climate and partnerships for the water development report to be launched at 2023 UN Water Conference. The WMO-led led Water and Climate Coalition aimed to address the gaps identified in the UN SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, in particular on improving data and information and capacity development, what is another example of a strong partnership. Cooperation and partnerships are also needed because both climate and water don't know borders. In our pan-European region, the larger majority of river, lake and aquifer basins are shared. And here, data sharing, information exchange and dissemination of knowledge are an absolute necessity for efficient climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, because they reduce uncertainties and they help build trust between countries, our member states. So UNEC contribution to this report was therefore focused on transboundary cooperation in European region. The UNEC Water Convention exactly requires and helps countries to cooperate in shared basins. It has helped to turn the region into one of the most advanced regions worldwide on transboundary cooperation. So again, I would like to thank WMO for the long-standing cooperation with the UNEC Water Convention on monitoring, assessment, and information sharing, as well as climate change adaptation and transboundary basins. So finally, let me congratulate WMO on the launch of the 2021 State of the Climate in Europe report. And I'm really convinced that this report will help to achieve SDG 13, serving as a good reference and knowledge base for developing climate policies and actions. UNEC is pleased to contribute to this and also to the future editions of this report. Maybe last remark, many of us travel next week to COP27 to Sharm el-Sheikh, to the UNFCCC, FCCC. Based on the report, I wish to call upon all countries to take bold action on both climate change adaptation and mitigation. So the fact that Egypt has put water so high on their agenda and developed the flagship initiative called Action for Water Adaptation and Resilience, or in short, AWARE, is also a positive sign. So I wish you us a successful event. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary of UNEC. Then I will give the floor to Dr. Florence Rabier, the Director General of ECMWF. Please, Florence.
Thank you very much. And dear Secretary General, the distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, I'm really delighted to be here for this inaugural joint State of the Climate in Europe 2021 report, which was developed in partnership between the WMO and the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which ECMWF implements on behalf of the European Commission. So we often and rightly hear in conversation or communication about climate change about the 1.5 degree global temperature limit as set out in the Paris Agreement. But we must not forget that Europe actually warms faster than this global average. It has already increased in temperature to be around 2 degrees warmer than what it was in pre-industrial ages at the end of the 19th century. And this is not talking even about the Arctic, which is like 3 degrees more than what it was. So 1.5 degrees, it's really, we are already above in Europe. So I believe we have a collective responsibility to produce and promote these reports, such as the one with its focus on Europe, underpinned with the best data and the best minds from WMO, the national Met services, academia, and scientific organizations such as ECMWF, and also data from all of you, but also space agencies. It's gratifying for me that the long-standing relationship that the ECMWF has with the WMO and our more recent but productive and fruitful relationship that we now have with the European Commission has converged to create this joint publication, building as it does on the Copernicus European State of the Climate published earlier this year, and the WMO's long pedigree in publishing its regional and global State of the Climate reports. So I want to thank and congratulate the WMO's Regional Office for Europe team, the Copernicus Climate Change Service under the leadership of Carlo Bontempo, now by my side, and the work of Freya Vamborg, and all the contributing and lead authors for their efforts in producing this publication, which is coming as it does just before the COP27. So the findings that are covered in this State of the Climate report in Europe, which we shall hear shortly, they're not going to be a surprise to you, but they are no less important for that. It is very human to be caught up in what's just been happening right here and right now, and to forget what has come before. But this report reminds us that last year, and perhaps already fading in memory due to the terrible events we already had this year and the record-breaking temperatures in 2022, but the last year sent us further and clear warnings about the state of our climate, including, tragically, the extreme events experienced in Europe that resulted in devastating loss of life and property. So these events should not be forgotten as we approach the upcoming and ongoing global climate discussions and negotiations. I believe that climate data is at its most useful when it's usable and understandable by the widest of audiences, because it's only by knowing the true state of the climate that we can communicate with authority on the changes that must be made and enable the action that must be taken. And so I applaud that this report is now part of the evidence base on which negotiators and policy decision makers can draw, contributing to the targets of SDG 13 as it does, and supporting the planning and the knowledge pool that can lead to the aforementioned and so very necessary climate action. So I thank WMO once again for this partnership, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Florence. The final statement in this section will be a video statement by Dr. Mauro Facchini, the head of Unit for Earth Observation of the European Commission. So, Secretariat, can you please start the video?
Dear Secretary General of WMO, distinguished guests and delegates, dear colleagues and friends, it is with great honor and immense pleasure that we welcome the first release of the State of the Climate in Europe 2021 report issued jointly by WMO and the Copernicus Climate Change Service, C3S. I send my most sincere apologies for not being with you in Geneva today for this important launch event. On behalf of the European Commission, I would like to congratulate and thank all contributors of this key publication. 2021 has again demonstrated the wide impact of Earth, weather and climate on life and properties. Record temperatures in summer and spring cold outbreaks, extended drought fueling significant wildfires, low sea ice extent, repeated floods in many parts of Europe. Climate change and environmental degradation are already happening and likely to aggravate further. They pose an existential threat to Europe and the world. The European Union, through its Earth observation program Copernicus, is fully committed to address those challenges. Copernicus looks at our planet and its environment to benefit all European citizens. It offers information services that draw from satellite Earth observation, such as our fleet of dedicated Sentinel satellites and in situ data. These value-adding activities are grouped in 6 thematic Copernicus services that are managed by the European Commission, one of which being the Copernicus Climate Change Service, also known as C3S, and representing Europe's contribution to the global framework for climate services. The data and information provided by the Copernicus service can be exploited by end users for a wide range of applications in numerous areas such as urban area management, sustainable development and nature protection, agriculture, forestry and fisheries, health, civil protection, infrastructure, transport and mobility, as well as tourism. The main users of Copernicus services are policymakers and public authorities who need information to develop, implement and follow up environmental legislation and policies, or take critical decisions in the event of an emergency, such a natural disaster or a humanitarian crisis. Implemented by the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecast, ECMWF, the Copernicus Climate Change Service addresses requirements defined by the Global Climate Observing System, GCOS, and builds on outcomes of the climate research community, such as the World Climate Research Programme, WCRP. With now over 150,000 users worldwide, C3S was established in 2014 to support adaptation and mitigation policies of the European Union by providing consistent and authoritative information about climate change. It became operational in 2018 and offers free and open access to a wealth of quality assured climate data, tools, information and knowledge based on the best available science. Beyond Europe, we support, for example, the CEO's activities on greenhouse gas monitoring from space and activities of the UNFCCC Secretariat. This joint report is complementing the regular C3S annual summaries published in January and the C3S European State of the Climate published in April. It is the result of a truly outstanding international and interdisciplinary collaboration across research networks and communities, building on the latest research, standards, best practices and services. Collectively, these products play a crucial role at policy level to ensure informed mitigation and adaptation policies. The European Union, European Green Deal, strives to make Europe first climate neutral by 2050 and has renewed 2021 its commitment in Copernicus and notably the Copernicus Climate Change Service for another 7 years. We look forward to this continued and growing cooperation between WMO and Copernicus to ensure regular monitoring of our Earth's climate for the benefit of the society.
I'd like to thank all the four speakers, and through these statements we already have some highlights from the report, but we will now have the presentation itself. It will be done jointly by the WMO Secretary General Petri Talas and the Copernicus Climate Change Service Director Dr. Carlo Bontempo from ECMWF. Here on the podium, we also have the three lead authors of the report, Dr. Stefan Rössner from the German Weather Service, Dr. Freya Wamberg from ECMWF, and Dr. Andrew Ferron, the Director of the Met Service of Luxembourg. So they will help us out to answer any tricky questions that might come up. But first, I leave the floor to the WMO Secretary General to start the presentation, and Dr. Bontempo will continue. So please, Secretary General.
Thank you, Ruar, and first of all, I would like to thank all the partners who have been engaged in this production of this report, and as is shown, this is a dual presentation between WMO and ECMWF Copernicus service, and we are grateful for this cooperation. Next slide, please. And here you can see that this has been a joint venture of 45 European Met services, and we have had several UN agencies on board, and we are happy that also UNECE, where Olga is present here today, has been one of the contributors, and this is to ensure that the quality of the report is highest possible. And that's our practice when we publish any of our status of climate reports, that we have wide engagement of the science community and key players who are behind. But the next slides will be shown by Carlo, and he will tell you what we have seen in physical environment, and thereafter I will tell what kind of impacts it has had on various sectors in the countries and in whole Europe. So, Carlo, please continue.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me fine. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Secretary General, and thank you everyone for coming to this launch. As has been said before, this is the end of a long journey, and as of first, it was a bumpy journey, a difficult journey at times, but we managed to reach this point, and I'm extremely happy to be here with you. As the Secretary General said, I will just cover some of the key indicators before passing it to him to present some of the impact. And the element I will mention in the next few slides are all elements that in some shape or form have appeared either through WMO communication or through C3S, the monthly bulletin, and the state of the climate that have been mentioned both by Florence and by Mauro in their intervention. But what is important, and why I think this report is particularly important, is that our society needs now, more than ever before, fresh and good quality information about our climate that is produced operationally in a timely fashion. So I see this report as an important step forward, and I look very much forward to a long-term collaboration on this matter with WMO. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the elements that picks up, or one of the highlights from the physical part of the report. What you see in this plot is the trend over different baseline for different regions, WMO regions. And what you see is the last 30 years, 1991 to 2021. In this last period, as Florence was mentioning in her introduction, Europe has warmed faster than the global average, has warmed faster than any other WMO region. This wasn't the case for the period where most of us were born. Looking at the faces in the room, I would think that's the case, where actually Europe wasn't warming that much faster. Actually, was one of the slowest warming in the world in the period 61 to 90. So it's remarkable. It also linked to the fact that all regions, all WMO regions, have increased the speed of warming. But for Europe, this is particularly remarkable. There are several reasons for that, and it's difficult to pinpoint to a single one, but the fact is that this warming has been observed and is much faster. So I guess this also acts as a warning, as a reminder that even fairly developed and advanced continents such as Europe is still very vulnerable to climate change, and we need to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. And in fact, if you look at how much it has warmed over the year, if you looked at 2021, it was nearly a degree above 1981 to 2010, and 1.5 with respect to the 1960-1990. And these are, I mean, I don't need to tell the people in this room who are all familiar with the topic how large these variations are and how meaningful they are for our activities, for nature, for biodiversity, and so on. If you look at sub-regional elements, then you can notice that some parts of Region 6 have actually warmed even faster. And in particular, the European part of the Arctic has exceeded 2 degrees, as it has part of Greenland, the eastern part of Turkey, and the Caucasus, and part of the Middle East. So in 2021, these were the highlight. Now we are looking at 2021 from 2022, after having experienced the warmest summer on record for the 2nd year in a row. So that's also useful to keep things in perspective. Next slide, please. For precipitation, actually 2021 wasn't what was less remarkable than, let's say, the last few months. It was a bit of a mixture of above average, especially in the eastern and southeastern part, and below average on a good part of the Mediterranean basin. And again, it's important to look at things in a perspective, because some of this variation in precipitation may have been a co-cause or an important element in explaining what we have then observed in 2022. So some of these processes have long memory, and the anomalies in precipitation and in soil moisture, in some cases, may have actually older roots, so to speak. And again, I see value in this report also because it's not just about the extreme event, the event breaking or the record breaking event, but it's also about constant monitoring. So the fact that we can constantly observe what's happening and put this in relationship with the large scale trend that we expect. Next slide, please. For the oceans, if you look at the trend in SSTs, the sea surface temperature wasn't, as it was for the temperature, the warmest on record. It was between the 6th and the 8th warmest year. And so was the, if you look at the ocean heat content and the sea level, you can see that there is generally a trend, a positive trend that is quite clear and evident from the data, the ocean data, but there are also some regional anomalies. In particular, you pick up from this sea level trend from 1993 to 2021, that in the North Atlantic, there is a region where the trend is negligible or even slightly negative. That's the region connected to the ocean convection and the thermoline circulation, where you do expect that sort of trend. So again, it's not just about the general trend and the extreme, is also about understanding the processes and monitoring what's happening constantly. Next slide, please. It's not by accident that the first slide of the presentation was of the mountain range and the glaciers, and there was a reference in our Italian colleague presentation earlier today about what has happened this year in the Alps with the Marmolada glaciers. But glaciers are clearly one of the most evident proof or thermometer, visual thermometer of what's happening at the regional level. Glaciers have lost 30 meters in ice thickness over the period from the moment I ended university to now, let's say. So in something that is quite fresh in our memory. It's not, we don't have to look back century. It's like 2 decades, slightly more. There was another event that is worth picking up on, and this was that in 2021, we have seen the first rainfall or recorded rainfall on the Greenland plateau. Again, very unusual and somehow yet another alarm bell. The sea ice recorded the daily minima sea ice extent for the European Arctic in September. And this, again, is not what we are seeing this year, for instance. So it's important to monitor those systematically because they allow us to make comparison from one year to the next. Next slide, please. It was also a year characterized by several extreme events, the most noticeable of which was the flooding over Western Germany and Eastern Belgium, but also affecting other nations in the region. The amount of rainfall that fell in less than a day was extremely large, over 240 millimeters. And I don't need to remind you the impact this had on in terms of casualties and damages in all this region. But there will be many more details in the next few slides, because the focus of this report is not just about the climate driver, but is also about the impact. Next slide, please. On the other side, so this flooding kept us busy, but it was also a summer of drought and wildfire. And it's interesting to look at the wildfire with respect to this year, because they are actually almost anti-correlated. So last year, the wildfire and also to some extent the drought and extreme heat was large over the Mediterranean basin, and especially the eastern part, while this year we have seen the exceptional fire season mostly happening over western side of Europe, in France, in northern Spain, and the like. There were also records being broken in both Italy. This has not yet been confirmed by WMO, but is potentially the largest, the new record for Europe, for temperature in Europe, and also regional record in many countries, including Spain. Next slide, please. There is a long list of extreme events, some of which have had, or most of which have had, a significant impact on our society. And I won't have time to go through all of them. I just want to pick one that I found particularly interesting and meaningful, which is this spring cold outbreak in Europe. This has affected many parts of Europe, but especially Western Europe and France in particular. And the reason why I want to pick it up is because it's linked to winemaking. It was had a very severe impact on winemaking, because the frost happened just after the growth of plants. And that's an interesting reflection for me, because the trend in frost has not, if anything, has gone shorter. So the last frost happened slightly earlier in the year, but the phenology of plants have also changed dramatically because of the warmer winter. So actually the risk of this kind of event is likely to have gone up. Next slide. I think I can pass it over to the Secretary General.
Thank you, Carlo. And now we will go to the impacts of those events. And what was just demonstrated that not only the averages matter, but especially these extremes very much matter. And this is also one of the motivators behind this new climate modeling initiative that we could go much more in the details of such events. But I will now show you some slides on impacts and how the statistics look from that perspective. Next, please. So we had altogether 51 events, and there were almost 300 casualties, and a large fraction of that was coming from the flooding event in Germany and Belgium. And the estimation is that the damage was about slightly exceeding $5 billion. And if you look at the events, it's very much dominated by flooding and storms. And if you look at the deaths, it's almost only flooding events, and also affected people. It's 510,000 people who have been affected, and again, it's very much flooding. And number two is wildfire, and economic damage is it's again dominantly flooding event. And since we have been warming the atmosphere, we have more humidity in the atmosphere, and that means that when it rains, it can rain more. And flooding, as you can see from the right hand side, it's very much a dominant player here. Next, please. Displacements, there were about 260,000 displacement, and you can see the curve in the bottom that there has been not so nice trend in that respect. And again, it's very much flooding dominated for the past years, where we have seen more than 1 million people affected, and number two is wildfire, and that's especially the case in southern part of Europe. Next, please. And if you look at the emissions from Europe, Europe has been showing good example for the rest of the world when it comes to emission mitigation. 32 countries have reduced their emissions during the past 15 years, and it's mostly European countries. And this European Green Deal is also a good example for the rest of the world. And these 2020 targets, they have been exceeded already, but then we have now this 2030 target, and that's going to be a challenge how to achieve that. We still have some years to go, but so far we haven't been moving fully in the right direction. But we still have some years to go. Next, please. And this each European country have made their own plans how to be successful in mitigation, and there are various sectors, as you can see: energy, agriculture, waste, land use, transport, and also forestry sectors, which are playing a role in this energy supply. We have both energy, we have industry, and also transport embedded, and that's clearly the largest sector here. Next, please. And then we have started seeing growing amount of heat waves. That was the message from the last IPCC report, that it has been taking place worldwide, excluding the southern tip of South America, and that has been felt also in Europe, and Europe has started seeing more often heat waves, and that's what happened last year, and it has especially happened this year. So far, the longest lasting heat wave was in 2010, when we got 50,000 casualties in Russia because of high temperatures and forest and peat fires, and that was a wake-up call for the Russian government as well. But this is the trend is not so nice in that respect. Next, please. And since we have UNICEF here as well, I'm happy to say something about children. Children are also at risk, and of course their future is an issue that we are dealing with. And UNICEF has made estimates of risk index, and you can see that it's very much dominated by the eastern and some of the western parts of the country, and we have some countries where the risk is lower. Next, please. And this net zero carbon society, that's the desire, and besides having impacts on climate, we can also have positive health impacts through successful mitigation. And this is also a business opportunity, because this transition offers new opportunities for businesses, and this health savings are also valued as in money terms. We are talking about 250 to 500 billion US dollars range. Next, please. And we have started provision of climate services, and we just published a report on climate services for energy sector, and here you can see how sensitive Western Europe is to various weather events. It's very much, for example, this temperature, which was a challenge for the European energy production last summer, especially when it was affecting both fossil fuel fired power plants and also nuclear power plants. The lack of cooling power was one of the challenges. And then we have had these water intake challenges, and also storms have had an impact. But you can see that in total, the impact in Western Europe is higher than some other reference parts of the world. Next, please. And since we are dealing with the early warning services in Europe, the situation is better than the global average, but we still have 25% of the European people which don't have access to proper early warning services, and there's also a challenge to have a better collaboration between meteorological and hydrological services, and that was one of the lessons learned from this German flooding case, and this drought warning statistics is a challenge also for Europe, and also flash flood challenge exists. So and those countries who have been able to integrate or enhance the collaboration between meteorological and hydrological services, they are much better prepared to face those challenges, and that's what we very much recommend from WMO's side. Next, please. And then we have this call from Secretary General Guterres, as I was already telling you in the morning, to prepare this early warning service plan, and this was printed today. You may have access to that from our website, and there are limited amount of printed copies available. And this is a joint venture of several UN agencies and also Red Cross, and it's we have already some elements in place: CRUISE, GMAS, GFCS, and SOF for the implementation of that. And this is something that we will handle next week in Sharm el-Sheikh. There will be a event for heads of state early next week, and we are seeking for endorsement, and it seems that there's a strong support for that activity. Next, please. Next, please. So, and finally, IPCC stated in its Working Group 2 report that climate change is the biggest challenge for the welfare of mankind and biosphere, and that's a problem that we have to solve. Next, please. So that's all from my side, and thanks, Carlo, for your contribution as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Tallis and Dr. Bontempo, for this presentation of the report. And of course, you will find the details in the report itself, which is now available. We now turn to the high-level segment. This panel is entitled Partnerships to Address Climate Change, Extreme Events, and Disaster Risk Reductions Toward Implementation of the SDGs. The panel aims at highlighting the importance of partnerships, at improving the uptake of the key messages of the report, and at encouraging the public and private collaboration. I kindly ask all the speakers to keep their statements short and comment on the report itself and the partnerships to address climate change and the consequences of climate change. I have a list with some speakers that have asked for the floor, and we will start with them. And while they give their statements, I will invite others, other high-level representatives also to ask for the floor. So first, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Lubsko Nikolovsky, the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Water Economy of the Republic of North Macedonia. And he should be available online, I think. Please, you have. He's not online. Okay. He was okay. Please tell me if he comes back. Yeah. Then I would instead like to invite His Excellency Tigran Gabrielyan, the Deputy Minister of Environment of Armenia. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and participants, it gives me a great pleasure to attend the regional conference of the Regional Association 6 of the World Meteorological Organization and to convey sincere appreciation to the WMO on behalf of the government of Armenia for organizing this important event. It's well recognized the climate variability has always been an important driver of the way civilization evolved. In many parts of the world, natural hazards such as flood, drought, and storms have been causing significant economic damage and casualties, which has been exacerbated by the impact of the climate change. According to the WMO statement of the climate state, in 2021, the rate of temperature increase in Europe are the highest compared to those observed in other regions. The weather and climate hazard caused hundreds of deaths and significant economic damage in 2021. In particular, extreme drought, heat, waves and floods severely impact Europe last year. Managing such risk and adapting to climate variability and change is a major challenge, particularly for developing and at least developed countries. That is a major concern, particularly for many countries in Europe, being more frequently affected by hydrometeorological disaster in the last decade. One of the above-mentioned countries is Armenia, a mountainous country with very complex terrain, highly vulnerable to a wide range of hydrometeorological hazards, including storms, severe drought, prolonged heat waves, severe cold spells, spring flooding, etc. And the frequency and intensity of this hazard increased due to climate change impact. The total damage and loss caused by hydrometeorological hazard from 2015 to 2019 are around $162.3 million in total, or $32.5 million annually. The warmest 3 years since 1935 have been observed during the last decade in 2010, 2018, and 2021. Summer 2021 was the hottest on record in Armenia. The record high temperature in Armenia was observed in July 2011, when maximum temperature reached 43.7 Celsius. During the period from 1935 to 2021, mean annual temperature increased by 1.5 Celsius. However, the warming trend has been more pronounced since the beginning of 2000s. The frequency of weather and climate extreme has also increased, including heat waves, drought, severe rainfalls, highly storm, etc. The climate change projections show that mean annual temperature in Armenia may increase by up to 4 Celsius by the end of the century. This may cause up to 14 reduction of runoff in Armenia by the end of 21st century, under worst climate change scenario, dramatically worsening already existing water storage issue. Lake Sevan, the largest freshwater body of Armenia and the Caucasus region, is under serious threat. The biodiversity and unique ecosystem of the mountainous region of Armenia are very fragile and highly vulnerable to present and future climate change. Furthermore, it is expected that the current semi-desert area covering highly populated area of Ararat Valley should extend of a higher elevation due to warming, and the desertification will be serious issue. We recognize that the only way to reduce the impact of climate variability and change is to shift the paradigm toward managing risk preemptively instead of the post-disaster action. This requires not only a deeper understanding of risk, but also timely provision of high-quality hydrometeorological information to decision maker. Therefore, the role of the National Hydrometeorological Service is crucial, particularly in performing its core mandate related to early warning, forecast of daily to seasonal and long-range basis and climate assessment. Fortunately, rapid advances are being made in the understanding and prediction of the climate system. It enables to provide climate product and service through optimizing us of existing data and monitoring product sector specific climate product and produce reliable prediction starting from daily to seasonal and then on decadal basis. However, this is still a lot of be done. Particularly attention should be paid of the development of the human and technical capacities that are needed at the national level to ensure that users need are adequate addressed. Expanding the production, distribution, and other relevant and up-to-date weather and climate service can be achieved by pooling expertise and resource through international cooperation. I would like to ask this opportunity and refer to the decision 1.5 on the recommendation of Regional Association 6 of the World Meteorological Organization on the development and implementation of the multi-hazard early warning system for Central Asia and the South Caucasus, and request the WMO Secretariat to support the project proposal development process and resource mobilization for the implementation. The implementary of mentioned project will support of the short-term warning and seasonal climate scales, including drought, flood, and other climate risks. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe that the regional conference can serve as a platform to building this kind of collaboration, facility transfer of knowledge, and identify good practices in order of future empower NMHS is delivering improved service and products to reduce disaster risk and support sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I understand that His Excellency Lepsko Nikolovsky, the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Water Economy of the Republic of North Macedonia is now available online. So please, Minister, you have the floor.
Hello, dear Secretary General, dear representatives of the World Meteorological Organization and their permanent representative Europe countries and directors of National Meteorological and Hydrometeorological Service. Distinguished participants, just shortly, I would like to congratulate for this event, and it's my great honor and pleasure to address you on behalf of the government of the Republic of North Macedonia on this occasion of the launch of the State of the Climate in Europe 2021 report. And I would like you to congratulate the delivery of the first edition of this report on the state of the climate in Europe. I truly believe that the present report will update leaders and citizens on the latest information about the weather and climate condition in Europe for 2021, the impacts of weather and climate events also, and having in mind that this ongoing conference addressing the future role of the National Hydrometeorological Service, I wish the participants to foster the integration of European meteorological infrastructure for providing better quality of products and services, and the government of the Republic of North Macedonia dedicates to its Euro integration process, especially this year with starting the negotiation, remains committed to the support of the all activities of Regional Association 6 in cooperation with the World Meteorological Organization. I wish you a successful conference. I hope so that we will have some concrete conclusions, measures, and also recommendations from your side. I wish you all the best, and once again, thank you for this chance to shortly address on this conference as a Minister of Agriculture, also participate in this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Then I think we should have Her Excellency, Mrs. Ankica Gudeljevic, the Minister of Civil Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina, with us online. Is that correct? Yes. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, I would like to greet you personally and on behalf of the Ministry of Civil Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all at the beginning of the conference that, following global changes, raises a highly important issue: the role of meteorological and hydrological institutes. So here we are today for science and humanity. Climate change impacts have been already observed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We need to respond to climate change by investing in mechanisms for overcoming gaps and explore the impact of change. Exploring resilience to climate change and enhancing cooperation at the international level are next steps ahead of us. National reports of Bosnia and Herzegovina further to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, as well as scientific evidence, speak in favor that the climate has changed dramatically in recent decades. In the last 10 years, 6 have been categorized as very or extremely dry years, while 5 are characterized by extreme rainfall, which resulted in severe flooding. Alarming weather hazards marked the period between 2009 and 2019. Extreme floods affecting population, economy, infrastructure, and production are striking us periodically since 2009. And extreme drought and peak temperatures have become familiar since 2011. Unfortunately, year after year, the situation is just getting more serious. Just for example, typical autumn months are almost eliminated, particularly over the southwest region. Climate change affects all life spheres, making significant changes in the economy, water economy, hydropower, human health, forestry, biodiversity, sensitive ecosystems, and tourism. Bosnia and Herzegovina is located in a very sensitive area that is particularly affected by climate change. And in this regard, equipping hydrometeorological institutes, ministries, civil protection, police administrations, and emergency services should be of the utmost importance. It is therefore necessary to provide early warning equipment for weather hazard, but also predictive software that can provide reliable information with a particular point of a high precision. Such information in a timely manner should be distributed to all in immediate danger, ensuring rapid and timely action in preventing adverse climate change effects. Finally, Bosnia and Herzegovina should be ready to report regularly on greenhouse gas emission into the atmosphere, but also be able to provide its role as a reliable international community partner to the international community in risk assessment and prevention of major accidents and disasters due to climate change. The role of meteorological and hydrological institutes is therefore more important than ever. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister. Next, I would like to ask the Secretariat to run a video message from His Excellency Claude Hagen, the Minister of Agriculture, Viticulture and Rural Development of Luxembourg.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address this high-level panel today. I'm very honored to be able to address you via this video message today. I would like to congratulate the VMO's Regional Association 6 for the publication of the first edition of the State of the Climate in Europe 2021. This report clearly shows that climate change is happening in all regions of the world, and Europe is no exception. The agriculture sector, the basis of the world's food production, is in particular impacted by climate variability, climate change and extreme events. This is why in Luxembourg, the Agriculture Ministry decided already in 1907 to start collecting meteor observations. These long-term records provide us today with the necessary data to understand our rapidly changing climate. In order to address this challenge, it is vital to provide the best service for society and in particular for the agriculture sector. In this regard, an inclusive partnership is vital on various levels: global, regional, national and local. Also among different socio-economic sectors with public, private and academic representatives. I would like to highlight one such particular partnership for Luxembourg, where the Ministry of Agriculture, Viticulture and Rural Development is promoting the use of an innovative insurance scheme against the impact of droughts on meadows. This index insurance is based on the data collected by the meteorological stations to determine possible economic consequences of the farmers due to the drought situations. In order to promote farmers to conclude contracts with the insurances, the Ministry is covering 65% of the costs of the contacts. Together with partners in Luxembourg from research and the private sector, we are looking to find solutions how to best adapt the agriculture sector to the challenges posed by climate change. I thank you very much for your attention and wish you a successful continuation of your conference.
I would now like to invite His Excellency Razvan Rusu, the ambassador at the Permanent Mission of Romania here in Geneva. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. I have a long speech. I will try to make it short. It's a privilege to represent Romania at this opening of the Regional Association Regional Conference. Given the launching of the State of the Climate in Europe 2021 report, this event marks a day of great importance for the regional meteorological community as brings a significant science-based landmark contribution to the improvement of knowledge in the field of climate. As Romania will host the WMO Regional Agrometeorological Center for Regional Association in Europe, this annual report on the state of the climate in Europe will provide crucial information that will substantiate the decision-making in the field of agriculture in Romania, a country whose agriculture has already been significantly affected by the negative impacts of climate change. At present, the infrastructure capacity of the National Meteorological Administration of Romania is being improved and modernized through the implementation of a project named InfraMeteo, meaning modernization of the infrastructure for monitoring and warning for severe hydrometeorological phenomena in order to ensure the protection of life and property. And it's being financed through a cohesion fund of the European Commission. The general objectives of InfraMeteo are the following, and there are 7. Modernizing of the meteorological radar network. Second, modernizing of the lightning detection network. Third, modernizing of the communications infrastructure and improving of the National Meteorological Administration IT system. Fourth, extending modernization of the National Automatic Weather Stations network. Fifth, acquisition of a system for receiving, processing, visualizing, archiving, and disseminating data from meteorological and atmospheric surveillance satellites. 6, acquisition of a system for receiving, processing, archiving, and disseminating data from the Copernicus Sentinel-1, 2, 3, and Sentinel-5P satellites able to monitor the areas affected by disasters or crisis situations on the national territory of Romania. And the 7th, and the most important, upon which I will insist, setting up the WMO, Regional Agrometeorological Center for Regional Association in Europe. On this last objective, the establishment of the regional center, in Romania's view, this center will strengthen cooperation among national meteorological and hydrological services, will enhance capacity building and facilitate beneficial partnerships at European and worldwide level, aiming at a successful implementation of the research projects and programs oriented towards the mitigation and effects of global warming and climate change. Also, the center will provide a full range of activities, starting from monitoring and observation, going through data exchange and processing, and ending up with service delivery. Its overall purpose is to determine the impact of weather and climate on current and future agricultural systems, and to determine what needs to be done in order to provide long-term sustainability of the agricultural system in RTVE, in the context in which the variability and climate change become more and more obvious all over the world. And finally, I believe that the professional capacity and the expertise of the Romanian specialists in the field of agrometeorology, as well as their involvement in the activities of the Standing Committee of the WMO Technical Commission for Weather, Climate, Water, and related environmental services, are also very valid arguments that are pleading for Romania to host this center. Once again, I thank you, and we wish you all the best and the success with the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. So I would now like to invite other governmental representatives, either here in the room or online, that would like to have the floor to raise their hands. And I know that Milan, sitting over there, he is following the online session. Do I see anyone here in the room? And Milan has no one. I think there will be maybe a couple of ones later on, but we will then go to the UN agencies. So I have a list here of UN agencies that I would like to invite to take the floor. And in fact, on the top of that list is, again, the Executive Secretary of the UN ECE, Ms. Olga Algairova, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want really to annoy you with two statements, but ladies and gentlemen, maybe another topic now. As you know, we saw the presentation on climate change impact and disasters. They don't know borders. So at the beginning, I was speaking about the water cooperation and partnership with WMO, just a little bit to highlight the importance of water cooperation, and then a little bit about the transport, and I finish, I promise. So today, why is important to cooperate on water? Today, 60% of global freshwater flow is in transboundary basins shared by 153 countries. So, and those disasters, climate change impacts are mostly felt through the water. We saw the presentation, floods, droughts, etc. You know, so, and we cooperate transboundary through the borders on the water, on adaptation to climate change, and we can reduce this disaster risk by reducing uncertainty through exchange of data, enlarging the planning joint space, developing actions together in coherent manner, as well as we can share the cost and also the benefits of such cooperation. So this was my number one. Transboundary cooperation is not for SDG 6, what is this water, SDG 13, what is climate action, but to all SDGs, you know, namely in today's geopolitically divided multilateral space. Transboundary cooperation important on all SDGs, health, poverty, food security, ecosystem protection, all of them. Okay, this is my first one. As we saw from the report also, the European region, and I saw sometimes we speak about the EU, then UNEC is EU plus the eastern part of the region plus North America. So I speak about the European continent. So it's one of the most advanced regions in transboundary cooperation on climate change adaptation. So because countries in that region or continent have developed and implemented climate change adaptation strategies and plans integrated climate change adaptation into the planning documents. In particular, now I have a number of rivers: Danube, Dniester, Drin, the Meuse, the Neman, the Rhine, the Sava basins. So, but it's not still enough. There is still space for improvement. For example, on financing climate change adaptation still remains a challenge, and I hope we are going to speak about it in COP27. So speaking about water cooperation, I need to remind the UN Water Convention that serves to our member states for nearly 30 years. It's a unique legal and intergovernmental framework for transboundary cooperation on climate change adaptation, including flood and drought management through capacity building, experience sharing, developing guidance, projects on the ground. So, and the Water Convention serves not only to 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, but of course UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. And I need to remind here the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a good practices exchange on agriculture, water and climate change. There was a global workshop. Okay, second is the inland transport that also we work very much with in UNEC. Why I want to speak about this? Because the direct greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector account for 23% of global energy-related CO2 emissions, and what is more than 71% of which comes from the inland transport, in particular from the road transport. So we have several frameworks for supporting decarbonization in the inland transport sector. For instance, regulations for the safe and efficient electric vehicles, automated vehicles. That is the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations. Then just 2 more informations we established. Of course, we work on more climate-friendly transport by railway, inland waterway, intermodal transport. We support mobility by cycling and public transport. So this is why we created a new group of experts on cycling infrastructure module. It was established this year recently, and it was in support in close liaison with the PEP partnership on cycling promotion, active mobility. And this is contribution to the implementation of the Pan-European Master Plan for Cycling Promotion adopted in Vienna in May 2021. And second group of experts on assessment of climate change impacts and adaptation for inland transport. The goal or target of this group of experts is to raise awareness, build capacity, integrate knowledge from countries and the scientific community on climate change, impact assessment, and adaptation for inland transport. So, so far, I'm happy to inform you that WMO has been actively participating in all these or both of this group of experts and contributing to its output. So, and we want to also collaborate with WMO on decarbonization, safety, adaptation, mitigation, and inland transport as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary. Next is Mr. Octavian Bivol, the Regional Director of the UNDRR, and I think he should be available online. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, I'm very pleased to join today to mark the launch of this first edition of the WMO State of the Climate in Europe Report 2021. And indeed, it's also my pleasure to congratulate the World Meteorological Organization and the European Union's Earth Observation Program Copernicus, as well as all other partners and authors who contributed to this important report. The report indeed exemplifies already the importance of partnership and also cross-sectoral multi-hazard approach involving expertise from across disciplines, organizations and governments, and producing this very important evidence. UNDRR was very pleased to be able to contribute to this report. While I'm pleased to join the launch of this comprehensive report and document and congratulate all of you for its development, I must echo the many speakers that spoke before in underlining how extremely troubling its findings are. It is very evident that climate change is outpacing our action. Climate impacts are hitting earlier and harder than expected, resulting in the avoidable loss of lives and livelihoods. And as we have just heard from the authors, these impacts have been growing in scale and ferocity in Europe as well. Europe warmed more than twice the global average of the past 30 years. We have witnessed in 2021 devastating floods, wildfires, extreme heats. Again, this year, 2022, we have seen wildfires and heat waves, and the total burnt area was 4 times greater than 2006 to 2021 average. We also have heard about the increased and highest numbers of internal displacements triggered by weather-related disasters. All these events are clearly demonstrating once again that while the European region is one of the most advanced regions in transboundary cooperation and on climate action, much more needs and can be done. And indeed, as we head into COP27, we must continue boosting both commitment to mitigation, but also, as previous speakers mentioned, adaptation efforts. And we should be striving towards a future where heat waves or wildfires, floods or droughts do not have to devastate. A future with zero climate-related disasters, as climate-related hazards are going and rapidly growing in terms of number, frequency, and severity. We can reduce vulnerability and exposure so that hazards do not turn into these devastating disasters. And for that, we must put in place systems and practices now that reduce the impacts of future crises. The European Roadmap for Disaster Risk Reduction for 2021-2030, which was endorsed by member states in Europe and Central Asia at the regional platform in Portugal held last year, identifies challenges, lessons, opportunities, and pathways, but also offers the platform for partnership to support more risk-informed and inclusive regional, national, and local disaster risk reduction policies, strategies, actions, and systems for regional collaboration and shared learning. We encourage an all-society inclusive approach to stop this spiral of disasters. In conclusions, I would like to congratulate once again for this important launch, and we look forward to work together to address the challenges we face in the region. Thank you so much for your attention and the opportunity to contribute to this important meeting.
Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to Mrs. Afshan Khan, the Regional Director for Europe and Central Asia of the UNICEF.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secretary General Tallis, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the World Meteorological Organization for inviting UNICEF to provide inputs to the State of the Climate Europe 2021 report and to participate in today's launch. The report is an important source of evidence on the annual state of our climate. I note with concern for 2021, Europe is listed as the fastest warming region among all WMO regions. As highlighted in the report in 2021, high impact weather and climate events led to hundreds of fatalities directly affecting around 510,000 people. We know that children have and will continue to bear the brunt of these impacts, particularly those living in communities that have contributed the least to global greenhouse gas emissions. According to UNICEF's Climate Risk Index, nearly 125 million children in Europe live in medium high-risk countries. In light of such evidence, concerted efforts among UN agencies and partners are urgently needed to provide children with the means to survive, grow up and thrive, while at the same time addressing the root causes of the climate crisis. We are confronted with an increasing intensity and frequency of weather and climate-related disasters. UNICEF renews its call for government and partners to ensure that national determined contributions, national adaptation plans, and strategies take children and youth into account. One sobering example of the impact of the climate crisis on children is the series of heat waves that have recently swept through Asia, Europe, and North America. In the report that was released last week, UNICEF asked leaders and governments to protect children from climate devastation by adapting critical social services, including water, sanitation and hygiene, health, education, social and child protection. Prepare children to live in a climate change world by providing children and young people with climate change education, disaster risk reduction education, and green skills training, and prioritize children and young people in climate finance and resources by significantly increasing adaptation funding. And lastly, to prevent a climate catastrophe by drastically reducing greenhouse gas emissions and keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius alive. Furthermore, when we talk about partnerships, I wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate the WMO for being assigned to lead the Early Warnings for All initiative, which will be an important climate adaptation measure to protect children and youth from the worst impacts of climate change. As was highlighted in a recent report by the European Environment Agency, only 1 in 10 schools is equipped to withstand the impacts of climate change. Therefore, UNICEF looks forward to closely collaborating with the WMO to ensure that early warning systems are designed to protect children and youth. I'm also pleased to share that the Intergovernmental Declaration on Children, Youth, and Climate Action has so far been signed by 15 member states in Europe. This is a first of its kind commitment to accelerate inclusive, child and youth-centered climate policies and action at national and global levels. Going forward, UNICEF urges countries to sign the declaration and to implement the actions. The climate crisis for many young people is the defining human and child rights challenge of this generation, and it's already having a devastating impact on well-being of children globally. As UNICEF, we're committed to ensuring our efforts on climate change are integrated in all aspects of our work. Some of our examples and partnerships with member states include in Bulgaria, thanks to our long-standing country program and solid relationship with government, UNICEF has helped to integrate a child and youth perspective in upcoming legislation and regulations on climate change and the environment. In Armenia, UNICEF is supporting the development of a 3-year comprehensive environmental education program linking in-school learning with the youth-led action in communities. And finally, with the government of Turkey, we've recently established a climate council to renew and update its national climate change policy framework. The council, in collaboration with UNICEF, is engaging youth climate envoys in this policy process. I'd like to conclude by saying that the best investment we can make for children now is to ensure that the services they need to survive, grow up, and thrive are resilient to climate and environmental shocks, and that we support all children and young people with the education and skills they need to create a green transition and adapt to a world where climate change is a reality, and they will need to adapt to that in a way that allows them to survive this next century. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Khan. Then I would give the floor again to Professor Petri Talas, WMO Secretary General, to sum up a bit, and we will afterwards have a more technical discussions with representatives of the agencies that have provided input to the report. But first, please, Petri.
Thank you, Ruar. I don't have too much to add, but I would like to thank all of the speakers, both ministers, Mr. Ambassador, and colleagues from other UN agencies for your contribution and your interest towards climate issues. And this is demonstrating that disasters and climate change, it's wider issue than just some sort of inside issue for the meteorological and hydrological community. So we have a common challenge ahead of us, and we are grateful for that. So many players are nowadays engaged, and that's encouraging when it comes to forthcoming COP27 and COP28 and our progress in both the climate mitigation, but also adaptation, where our community can play a very important role. And these facts that we are bringing on the table, they are very much heard nowadays, and they have had already big impact on decision makers, on private sector, which provides solutions for climate mitigation, and unfortunately also negative impact on the mentality of young people. So that's what we have also felt, and that's a little bit unfortunate. But I think that it's important that we continue communicating these facts to various audiences to speed up climate mitigation and also adaptation efforts. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petri. So I would now like to invite representatives from 2 UN agencies that have been contributing to the report to reflect on the work done and its possible importance to the socio-economic development. While they speak, I would also like to invite all of you, both here in the room and online, to raise your hand if you have questions to the report. So first, Mr. Vladimir Kendrowski of the World Health Organization, and I think you should be available online. Yes, I can see you there.
Yes, good afternoon, and really, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a really pleasure being here today in this occasion of launching the report on Europe. And in particular, on behalf of WHO European Center on Environment and Health, as part of WHO Regional Office of Europe, I would like to congratulate to WMO for provide us opportunity to participate with all other actors in this report. For us in WHO, of course, the climate change and its health effects, like extreme weather events, is very important, because we realize that these events are not happening in some remote landscape or in a distant future, but here and now, and threatening human health with disaster consequences. So an immediate action is imperative for us. But also it's important, while this can be measured, there are many indirect effects which are more silent, such as increasing transmission of vector-borne diseases, effect of mental health, disruption of healthcare system, and as well as water and sanitation supply, food quality, and changes in the ecosystem then impact the human health, because this is in turn can affect our health and well-being as well. So it can also lead to an amplification of current health problem, as well as the new risk and pressures to the environment, the social and economic determinants of health. Thus, for us in WHO European region, and in particular in Bonn office, providing evidence-based policy advice, generating evidence on health co-benefits from decarbonization, and offering guidance and tools include on heat health action and other climate change indicate even is imperative. And some of the findings are already there in the report, because there is no question that the health sector must lead by example. We need to cut the carbon emission to decrease the climate footprint of 4.4% of global net emission for the health sector. But in the same time, the health system a contributor to 10% of global GDP. So investing in climate smart health system is investing in health of the people. We have in WHO Europe our European program of work, which is our vision for health in the region. It set out an agenda to build systems that enable people to live healthy lives, investment in healthy environments, creating low carbon societies and building climate resilient health system are essential ingredients in achieving this agenda and offer some of the best health and economic return to the society. For us also, climate change is very high in the health agenda, but we would like also to provide health in the global climate agenda, because we think that health can be a game-changing driver for climate solution, and thus WHO would like to promote all these partnerships within the UN agency and with our member states to work together, because now is the time to elevate climate leadership throughout organizations, communities, and national, regional, and the local levels. Once again, I use this opportunity to thank you and congratulate WMO for this important event, and hope that we'll contribute in the series of the reports in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we should also have Mr. Lukas Wirowski from the UNEC Transport Division online.
Well, in fact, I'm here in the room.
Ah, you're in the room.
Yes.
Very good. Even better.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for working with UNEC Sustainable Transport Division. I will say a couple of words in addition to, of course, what Madam Executive Secretary of UNECE already mentioned. At UNEC Sustainable Transport Division, our main objective is to work to assist our member states, not only actually of UNEC, but also globally, to achieve sustainable transport. And thinking now in terms of adaptation of transport to climate change, we cannot have sustainable transport if we would not be thinking about resilient transport to climate change hazard. We welcome very much that the report that has been presented and launched today, it speaks about the impacts from climate change on transport. Now, when transport is impacted by climate change, what we see is disruption or damage to transport systems. And of course, those damages then have impact on the economies of countries, but also on the societal well-being. At the same time, what we recognize very much is that the urgency to work on adaptation of transport to climate change has not been recognized in many countries of the UNEC region, and possibly even more by many countries across the globe. We believe, therefore, that of course information on the impacts from climate change on transport in this very report is helping the countries, the transport community, to better understand that urgency. At UNEC Sustainable Transport Division, we have been working now for quite a number of years to explore, to better understand what are the impacts from climate change on transport, how that impacts the resilience aspect. We do recognize that infrastructure, especially infrastructure that has been built yesterday or a couple of years ago, following the standards that respond to the, so to say, yesterday climate, cannot be one that is resilient for the conditions that we are experiencing already today, and of course cannot be resilient to the conditions that we expect to have in the future. At UNEC, we have been working a lot with WMO and also with the WMO community. We have been building on the science that is produced here. There are all the RCPs 8.5, 2.5, the various models, so the modeling that we have been doing, the various indices that we have been looking at, and all this, of course, to better understand what will be the future conditions, so that we can help countries to understand, the transport professionals to understand the future conditions. We now are looking at the thresholds of the different weather phenomena, so that we can help the transport community understand how those thresholds may be changing in the future, so that in turn, this can be also better understood how the standards that are used for constructing infrastructure, whether these need to change in the future, so that exactly the infrastructure that is constructed today and is to serve for quite a number of years into the future will be resilient. So we obviously are looking forward to be continuing our great collaboration, to continue building on the science that is produced by WMO and by the WMO community, so that we can be overlaying the projections with the transport knowledge, and so that in the end we can really build the resilience in transport systems, and so assist UN member states, and especially the UNEC member states, to achieve sustainable transport. Congratulations on this report, and of course, very much looking forward to joint collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now open up for any questions or comments among the audience, and also questions to the lead authors. And in fact, I would like to spend the last few minutes also to allow the lead authors, if they would like, to give some statements on what they learned by working with this report and what they believe is the key message. But first, are there anyone in the audience, either here or online, that would like to ask a question or comment? Do you see someone? No? Yes, we have a representative of Ukraine here raising a hand. I'm not able to see your name, so please introduce yourself. You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. My name is Ruslan Revyakin. I'm a head of International Cooperation Department of Ukrainian Hydrometeorological Center. On behalf of Mr. Kulbida, the permanent representative of Ukraine with WMO, first of all, I would like to thank you for the first day of the regional conference, and it was a great importance, and we've learned a lot from the experience of our neighbors in Area 6 region, and it is of great importance, of course, and we'll make our conclusions, and we'll try to improve best practice of National Hydrometeorological Service within Area 6 region in our practice. You know, the situation in Ukraine is rather unequal due to the unforeseen circumstances, you know what I mean, but still, anyway, we'll try to do our best, and we'll follow, and we will join the club as well. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to you as well. And it's good to see that you are able to join us from Ukraine. Lead authors, would you like to comment on the report and any key messages that you have to us? And also, I have a question for you. We say in the report that the temperature increase in Europe is, Europe is the fastest warming region, and that it has warmed 0.5 degrees per decade over the period from 1961 to 2021. Is it possible to give a number for Europe from the pre-industrial age until now, or is that something we really shouldn't do? Who will start?
Yeah. So hello, Freya Van Boy from ECMWF and the Copernicus Climate Change Service. So indeed, we mentioned that in the report. I think it's worth re-noting that other regions in the world are also warming very rapidly. So not to forget that fact as well. When it comes to the pre-industrial, as you know, it's not as well defined as for the globe. Can discuss that as well, of course. But one can say that Europe has maybe warmed around 2 degrees since then, but we choose in general in these regional reports not to refer to pre-industrial because that reference period not being so well defined, which is why we're trying to stick to the WMO defined reference periods, the later ones.
Yes, I agree with Freya. Although the pre-industrial level might be appropriate for the global level, we may test it for the RA6 as well, because we do have a very dense network of historical stations. There's a chance at least. And with regard to the fastest warming region, if you look at previous decades, this was not Europe. So there is some interdecadal variability, but nevertheless, the trend remains to be upward unless we do something about emissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Andrew, your key message.
Yes, thank you very much. And well, I think on the pre-industrial period, I would not add something, but maybe just highlight, because I was more working on the climate impacts and mitigation and adaptation policies report. So maybe I would like to highlight here, especially the contribution by UNICEF, and also take this opportunity to thank UNICEF and all the UN agencies for contributing to this report, where we saw that in the European region, 125 million children in Europe live in medium to high risk country, which is quite a high number. And for me personally, this was really also a number that I didn't expect it to be so high. And yeah, that's why I would like to highlight it here again as one of the report. And while I have the floor, I would also like to thank, I think on behalf of the three of us, the WM Secretariat for the tremendous support, and especially the Region 6 for the support we gave. And yeah, also again, the UN agency for all the inputs, and all the authors for the inputs to this for this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I would like to close this session by thanking the governments, the UN and EC agencies for the collaboration. And I would like to thank all of those of you that have been present here today, and both online and in the room. And finally, we will now have a group photo. I think that will be outside here. Yes. And after that, those of you that are here in Geneva are all invited to a reception in the Attic restaurant here in the house, jointly offered by WMO and ECMWF. So Thank you everyone for attending.
When I become a winner and a sinner, playing life on end, you won't catch me flying higher than I'm trying. Don't worry, my friend. it feels alright. I can run head first into a wall. You always catch me when I fall, and every time I might do it wrong, you prove me right. It was easy to say again, I'll never say goodbye to all my friends, to all my friends, to all my friends, friends, to all my friends. Hey! When I'm far away and got no time to write you, then I will lie in bed and think of us so far apart, far apart. I never like it, but sometimes I am without you. You never like it, my friend, you gotta know